Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Today's video is one that I'm excited to be filming, but it's also one that I'm vaguely embarrassed to be filming. Because as you can probably tell by the title, this is yet another fabric haul. Specifically the third fabric haul that I've done in as many months. And I think this is the biggest fabric haul that I have done yet because it consists of not one, not two, but 3 trips to Joann's, 3 orders from Fabric Mart, and 1 order from Fabric.com. However, unlike my previous 2 hauls, this wasn't a case of me slipping and purchasing a large quantity of fabric. Pretty much each of these materials were purchased with a specific project in mind or very good idea of what I will turn them into. It was very much the case of me purchasing fabrics with having a project for that fabric planned, as opposed to me picking a fabric and then being inspired and creating something based off of that material. So it's a bit backwards from how I usually work, but probably how most people actually work and how you're supposed to work. Now, I'm generally a believer of the whole you can never have too much of a good thing sort of thing, and that applies to fabric too. However, I think if it's possible to have too much fabric, I'm getting close to having too much fabric. So this is going to be my last haul video for hopefully a very long time. Black Friday is coming up and I might be weak and end up buying some material then, but I'm hoping not to buy any more fabric until 2020 and even put off purchasing fabric in 2020 for a couple of months. So I guess it's a good thing that this haul is going to be an extra large one because it's probably going to be the last one there will be for a while. And even though this video is going to be very long, and even though I have a lot of fabric to show you, before I actually bring out the material, I feel like I need to give an explanation for some of / most of these purchases. You see, it all started after Halloween, when all of my deadlines were alleviated, at least for the moment, and I could basically focus on whatever project I wanted. I decided the project that I wanted to put all my time and energy into was an 1881 sporting costume inspired by Sherlock Holmes, as well as a fashion plate that I will link down below. I had all the materials for this project, and I'd even finished the skirt for it. And then I pulled the skirt back out, and I realized that the quality of construction on the skirt was pretty poor. I hadn't done any hand sewing on it, and I also hadn't taken the time to fit it over the appropriate foundation garments. I knew if I moved forward with the project, I'd end up being unhappy with it as a whole, just because the skirt itself was so poorly created. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough fabric left to make a new skirt and still complete and carry on with the project. So I decided that I need to get new material for that project. And I picked out a fabric that I wanted from Fabric Mart, and I was all set to get it just as soon as it went on sale. And then it didn't go on sale. For 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days. It still wasn't on sale. They hadn't had any kind of 65% off site-wide sale. They hadn't had wools specifically on sales or suitings, nothing. This fabric just refused to go on sale. And if you're familiar with Fabric Mart, then you'll know that they price their fabric with the expectation that it will be 60% off at some point. So it really just is not worth purchasing anything from them at full price. So I decided to cheer myself up and take a little trip to Joann's. I did have a few things on my list, specifically fabrics for a simplicity pattern, which I'm going to be following soon, and I wanted to get a few different options that you guys could vote on. I also planned on doing a flip through a Butterick pattern catalog for the 1940s, and I want to let you guys vote on which project from that catalog I should recreate and get some fabric options for that potential project as well. So with that in my mind, I went to Joann's, and right off the back I ended up finding 2 fabrics that were really suitable for the simplicity project. So the first is one of their premium quilt cottons, but it actually feels like a very lightweight cotton sateen. It has a beautiful sheen to it, and it's in the most gorgeous dark navy color. It's showing up a little bit purpley on camera, but in person it's a true very dark kind of midnight navy. And this is very similar to the fabric featured on the pattern envelope, so I thought it would be a great candidate. But having one fabric isn't really worthy of a poll, so I decided to get another option as well. And this is from the Plaid Toots collection, which is one of my favorite fabric collections that Joann's does. They come out with it every year. They feel almost like a wool flannel. They're very soft and they're a really nice thickness, and they're just perfect for making suits or garments or pants or pretty much anything you can imagine. So I ended up getting 3.5 yards of one in this beautiful orange and mustard and cream colored check, which I thought would suit this project nicely as well. I have one other fabric in my stash that would work well for that project, so that gives me 3 options that you guys can choose between, which I felt was perfectly adequate. But that wasn't all. As I said, I wanted to get some fabric options for a 1940s dress as well. And I had no idea what style of dress I would end up making, but I knew that I had a lot of quilting cottons already within my stash. And as much as I love quilting cottons, I will be the first to admit that they do not drape particularly well, and they also are really prone to wrinkling. So as much as I enjoy working with quilting cottons and the funky, huge variety of prints that they come in, they aren't the best fabric for making garments out of. I recently sold off a lot of the more traditional garment fabrics I had in my stash, specifically the rayons and the twills, as well as some polyester fabrics that I had, just because the prints of them or the color of them were really unfortunate. They're mainly fabrics that I purchased because they were on sale, as opposed to being fabrics that I really liked and wanted to add into my stash. So I sold a lot of those, and that didn't leave me with too many 4-yard or larger cuts of fabric that would be appropriate for 1940s dresses. So I decided to pick up a few cuts of fabric from the Joann Silky collection. I think these are made completely out of polyester, but they feel almost like a crepe. They've got a bit more weight to them, and they feel quite high quality. And they're also machine washable, which is really nice. So I bought these in 3 prints, and the first print is this dark purplish maroonish base. And from a distance, it almost looks like this print has bananas on it. It's actually floral, and I think this is called goldenrod. All I know is that it grows in huge patches by the side of the road here, and I am very allergic to it, but I also think it's very pretty and that this would be lovely for an autumny dress. The next one is a striped fabric. As you guys will probably know, I love working with striped fabrics because you can really play with the direction of them or create a chevron effect by cutting them on the bias. I just feel like stripes give you a lot to work with and are a really good fit for either a fitted garment or something that's quite drapey. So I purchased 4.5 yards of this one as well. It's from the same collection, so it's the same weight and thickness, same fiber content, and same washability. And it has mustard, light blue, dark blue, and plum colored stripes. So again, I thought the color scheme of this was quite 1940s, and I also thought the weight of the fabric was very appropriate for a dress from that era. The last one I bought is probably going to look quite ridiculous from a distance as well. I'm not sure if you'll be able to tell what the print is from this distance, but it's actually cranes, or at least some sort of large, vaguely aquatic bird. But I just really like the color of this. It's got a dark hunter green backdrop, and then it's got the white and brown bird print on top of it. I think from a distance it looks vaguely like a floral or even a geometric pattern, but up close it's very clearly birds. And again, just the color scheme and the scale of the print of this reminded me a lot of what you would see in the 1940s, so I thought it would be a good fit for a dress from that period that I make in the future. Now I had technically purchased everything that was on my list for Joann's, but one does not simply go into Joann's and leave with only the items on their list. So the day I went, they had just so happened to put out their newest addition to their sportswear collection, which is for autumn and winter, and it is a range of Melton wools, specifically Melton wool blends. So I think it is 30% wool and 70% polyester, but it feels really nice and the weight of it is amazing. It feels sort of like a very dense, compact felt, but since it's densely woven, it holds its shape quite well and it isn't prone to warping or fraying. It's one of my favorite wools to work with just because it really does what you want it to do. It's easy to cut, it's easy to sew with, it's easy to iron. It's kind of like the quilting cotton of the wool world, or the suiting world, or the coating world, or something like that. So if you can get your hands on some wool Melton, I would highly recommend it. It's an amazing fabric to work with, and theirs came in amazing colors. So it's showing up a little bit brighter on camera than it is in person, but is a beautiful fuchsia raspberry color. And when I saw this, it instantly reminded me of a fuchsia raspberry fabric that I purchased on my previous trip into the garment district. If you saw my last haul, which will be linked down below, you will know that I purchased this beautiful silk shantung from Butterfly Fabrics in New York City. And it's plum colored and raspberry colored, and then it's got like this really bright fuchsia as well as cream colored stripes. And this is the exact same shade of pink. Like seriously, they are a match made in heaven. And as soon as I saw this, it made me think of that plaid fabric that I purchased previously, and I knew I wanted to make something that paired them together. Specifically something 1940s themed, so I was thinking of a long, relatively fitted coat with kind of large open sleeve. I purchased all of this color of wool that they had at that particular store, which was about 7.5 yards. And I went home happy as could be and ready to plan my 1840s dream project. And when I actually got to planning, I came across a lot of fashion plates which were hugely inspirational, but they were a little bit too inspirational because the design I ended up settling on would have taken more, or at least I thought it would take more than 7.5 yards of fabric. So I decided the next day that I would go to a different Joann's. Hopefully they would have the same range of fabric in stock and they would have more of the color that I needed. So the next day I went back to Joann's, this time with only one thing on my list. I was only going to get more of wool in that particular color. 4 yards of it to be exact. It was going to be a quick in and out sort of trip. But as we've already established, there is no such thing as a quick in and out trip of Joann's where you only purchase what is on your list. I found so many things I wanted at this Joann's. It's much larger than the one that I usually go to, but it's also further away and a little bit less taken care of. Like they don't usually have sale signs up and the staff tends to be kind of rude and I just don't enjoy going there as much, but they have a larger selection of fabric, so I thought it was worth going to see if I could find more of this wool. But as I said, in the process I found so much good fabric. They had all of their Christmas fabrics out, they were really well stocked on all of the materials, and I just wanted to buy everything, and I almost did. As you would be able to tell if you could see the pile next to me. But at least at first I stuck to what I went in for. I went straight to the selection of wools, and they had probably a dozen different colors there, and they had relatively full bolts of each color, but they did not have the color that I needed. However, I did end up coming across this color which I liked almost as much. I don't know how to describe this. It's like a reddish, plumish, dark fuchsia-ish color, something in between those shades. And once again, this perfectly matches a fabric that I purchased previously in the garment district, specifically this orange one. And I know at a glance this looks very orange, and it is very orange, but it also has mauve tones in it as well as brown tones and a really rich purple color. And that purple color is really in keeping with the purple of this wool. It's got that same kind of pink base to it, and these just look really beautiful together, or at least they do in my opinion. And this is like a perfect autumn pairing. I love it. I don't think I would usually think to pair orange and purple on my own, since that fabric has those two colors in it and they work so well together. I just knew that this fabric would work really well with it too. So once again, I ended up purchasing everything that they had of it, and I plan on using this for an 1860s costume. The plaid will be turned into a really nice day dress, and then this will be turned into some sort of coat or shawl or outerwear that's historically accurate that will go over top of that dress. Though wool was all that was really on my list, I was also on the lookout for a suiting fabric that I could use for something tailored, because if I couldn't work on my 1880s Sherlock Holmes inspired suited ensemble, then I wanted to be able to work on a suit of some sort. I'd purchased a whole bunch of tailoring supplies from Bias Bespoke, and I was just itching to get to use it and feature it on some sort of project. And once again, I recently sold quite a lot of the suiting fabrics in my collection just because they were colors or weights I didn't find particularly appealing anymore. So most of the wools that I have, I either have quantities of that would only be suitable for smaller projects, or they're in very summery colors. They're sort of a light wool crepe that are striped or white or cream colored or blue, or just something that I wouldn't really wear in the middle of fall, verging on winter. So I was hopeful that I could find something at Joann's that would be suitable for a historic suit. And I ended up being successful because the larger Joann's had a beautiful selection of platitudes fabric, and this one really caught my eye. Now I know this isn't a extremely interesting fabric. It's a gray and dark gray colored herringbone, but this fabric perfectly matches some buttons that I recently purchased. And they're really cool buttons that have spiders embossed on them. I bought these buttons without a project in mind, but I knew I wanted to use them on something spectacular. So those had just arrived the day before I ended up going to Joann's. And when I saw this, I knew they could work perfectly in a project together. And as I said, I've worked with this platitudes fabric before and I'm very fond of it, so I knew it would work really nicely for a suit of some sort. So I purchased all they had of it, which was about 8 yards. And after purchasing that fabric, I came home and I was looking up references, and I was so inspired. Like seriously, so inspired. I knew I wanted to turn it into a suit from the Edwardian era, at least sometime between 1890 and 1920. And while researching those 3 decades, I came across so many fashion plates and garments and silhouettes that just made me feel so overwhelmed with inspiration. I seriously wanted to make everything. And I sat down, I just started sketching, and I had, I kid you not, probably 20 ideas that I wanted to pursue. And I ended up narrowing those ideas down to closer to 10, but I was still absolutely full of inspiration and feeling so passionate about these projects, I just wanted to move forward with all of them immediately. And obviously that wasn't practical, but I continued to collect references and to fine-tune my sketches on each of these ideas until I ended up with folders devoted to each project, as well as a specific sketch devoted to each one. And with those sketches and those references gathered together, I had a really good idea of the quantity of fabric I needed for each project, as well as the type of fabric and the color of fabric that I'd be interested in for each one. I'm actually going to be doing a sketchbook tour and a computer tour of sorts and take you through those ideas as well as the references that inspired them. But in this video, I'm more sharing the materials that will end up being used for them, because that research session that started with me trying to come up with a single idea for an Edwardian suit ended up spanning 3 days of somewhat manic research through Pinterest and museum archives and library archives that had fashion plates available and pretty much everything in between. I seriously spent so much time sorting through references and books and fashion plates and just coming up with all of these ideas and then combining them into original designs. And after all of that, I just immediately wanted to get all the materials I needed to create each one of these while I still had so much passion behind each project. So that's what I ended up doing, and that's what spawned the large quantity of this haul. But before we get into the fabric that I purchased for those projects, I did make a few more impulse purchases at this Joann's. And I know what you're thinking, me making impulse purchases at a fabric store? How shocking! However, even though these are impulse purchases, they were purchased with intentions to use them quite quickly, because these fabrics are all for Christmas costumes. And if you're familiar with my channel, which you probably are if you're over here on Patreon, every year I make a Christmas costume which is inspired by the holiday season. And usually these projects incorporate what you would consider to be traditional Christmas colors, so they're either silver or gold or cream or red or green. And this year I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. In fact, I hadn't given it a second thought. I haven't even given it a first thought. It really wasn't on my mind at all, except for the fact that that I knew I'd probably end up doing something. And then when I was browsing through this Joann's, I came across some of their holiday fabrics and I fell in love. I immediately knew this was something that I needed to purchase and was something that I needed to use for my Christmas costume this year. They had this fabric in 2 colors and I purchased the largest quantity I could of both colors because I loved it that much. So hopefully this will show up well on camera. It is a velvet, but it's basically a filigree / leaf pattern velvet that has been stitched onto a mesh base. So it does not have that traditional micro velvet feel to it where it has a slippery backside. It feels like a mesh, and then on one side it's very soft because it has the velvet stitched to it to create that pattern. The fabric is also slightly sheer, as you can probably tell, and very lightweight because of the way it is constructed. It's really not like a traditional velvet, though it does still have a beautiful drape to it and that lovely sheen that you associate with velvet. I think because of all these things, this is going to be a lot easier to work with than normal velvet because it won't be as slippery. And I also don't think it's going to be as prone to warping out of shape since mesh tends to be a little bit more well-behaved than velvet. Literally everything is better behaved than velvet. Velvet's just miserable to work with, but it's so pretty that sometimes you want to anyway. So even though I didn't have a specific project in mind for this, I knew I wanted to use it for my Christmas costume this year, and I bought as much as they had of it, which was around 6 yards. Now 6 yards is a lot of fabric, but it's not a lot of fabric considering what I usually make. And they ended up having this material in a beautiful green color as well that I also purchased. I'm not going to unfurl this one because it's really nicely bolted, but I will give you a little peek of the color kind of right here. It's the exact same design and pattern as the red one, it's just in a different color. And even though I love red and I love that other fabric, this color is my favorite. I just think it's beautiful. It's such a rich green. It really reminds me of the color of pine trees at the Christmas tree farm where I traditionally photograph my holiday / Christmas costumes. So I thought it'd be really beautiful to do something out of this and have it against that background of greenery. So I purchased all they had of this as well, which was 6 yards, but then I ended up going to a different Joann's and they had more in stock, so I purchased 2 yards as well. So my original plan was to use the red fabric and the green together and kind of have alternating bands around the hem of a robe of some sort made out of this velvet. But since I ended up purchasing more of this one, I now have 8 yards of it, I think I can probably do something standalone with just the green velvet and save the red for next year or something I make in the future. At the time I purchased those fabrics, I was very much envisioning some sort of robe just because of the sheer nature of them and the amazing way that they drape and the amazing way that velvet drapes in general. I thought they would look really nice over top of a separate dress. So that's what I purchased them with an idea for, but I really didn't have a solid idea at all since I wasn't even thinking about my holiday costume, much less thinking about it with these fabrics in mind. So I purchased them and then came home and ended up designing something around them that I'm really excited about. It's got a 17th century theme to it, which is one of my favorite centuries for fashion, specifically the 1620s and 1630s, and that's an era that I haven't visited in quite a while, so I'm excited to come back to it and make something kind of historically accurate from that period, but also put a fantastical twist on it and a twist of whimsy by making this elaborate velvet robe to go over top of a gown. And you'll see my references in my sketched out design for that in a future video, but I'm really looking forward to it. However, the haul of Joann's fabrics does not end there because in the same section they had this fabric. And it's made out of 4 different colors of sequins that are patterned in a striped design that is over top of a gray mesh base, and then the lines get shorter and shorter towards the ends to create a gradient effect. And this fabric is very sparkly because all of the stripes are made out of sequins, but it looks extra dramatic and sparkly since they've used different colors of sequins. So it has a lot more depth to it than a fabric that's just made out of a single color of sequins would. So I love this fabric so much, and it immediately reminded me of icicles, and I thought it'd be really fun to purchase it and make some sort of, again, robe that goes over top of a dress because it is sheer since it is on a mesh base, and that's just what I immediately think of when I think of sheer fabrics. As much fun as it is to make an overlay out of them, I think it's even more interesting when you make an over garment out of them, and then you can see little peeks of what you're wearing underneath it. So that's what I had in mind for this, and then after I got home and I started doing more research and thinking more and more about it, it ended up reminding me a lot of the court robes that you see worn in many decades, but specifically in the Regency era. And these were worn over top of dresses. Sometimes they were almost like a jacket, other times they were like a vest, other times they were really just like a skirt that had ties over the shoulder that basically formed a large train that would drape behind and sometimes over top of a gown that it was paired with. I'll try and link some references down below. So that's what I thought I could end up making out of this. And with that in mind, I purchased more fabric on another trip to Joann's for a Regency dress to go under it. This is the fabric that I ended up picking. I will try and hold it closer to the camera so you can see. This is what I would consider a very traditional early 1800s prints because it is a stripe and a dot pattern. It's actually not a stripe pattern at all, it's just dots, but the dots form something that look like stripes. And then this is a white quilting cotton, and the print on it is just glitter that has been sprayed over top. But since it is a quilting cotton, the glitter is pretty well integrated into it, and it shouldn't fall off and all over the place as I work with it, which is always nice. And I picked this because cottons were very popular in the Regency era. Usually they would have been a little lighter weight than a quilting cotton, but I like the opacity of quilting cottons from a modern standpoint. It means that you don't have to be as fussed with foundation garments that go underneath it, and the concern of being able to see those underneath the dress because the dress itself is so see-through. So I like that this fabric is pretty opaque on its own. I also just really liked the print of it and how nicely the silver and the white work with the much more dramatic and the much darker gray sparkly fabric that I bought to go over top of it. So much like my main Christmas costume dress idea, this is going to mix elements and very strong elements of historical fashion in the dress that is created, but then there's going to be a strong fantasy element that meets up with that historical inspiration in terms of a garment that's worn over top of a dress. So I'm really excited about both those projects. I really hope I can manage to get them both done before Christmas and get them photographed. I actually have one more planned for Christmas as well. I want to make an 18th century riding habit because I think the red and the gold and the cream tones of that would be absolutely stunning against the green backdrop of a Christmas tree farm, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna have time. But I'm gonna do my best and I'm gonna keep you posted on the progress. So I've been filming for 30 minutes and I've just finished going through my Joann's purchases, so that doesn't bode particularly well for the length of this video, but let's get right into my Fabric Mart purchases. Because right after my Joann's shopping extravaganza, of course, Fabric Mart had its wool go on sale. And they also had cotton on sale, so the first fabric that I ended up adding to my cart was this plaid, and you will have already seen this fabric if you watched my previous video because I made a blouse out of this fabric. So this is just what I have left from it. It was kind of funny, I was checking Fabric Mart every day to see what their sale was, and they put cotton on sale, and I was like, that's so stupid. Who is buying cotton in the middle of autumn? It's so warm out. No one wants cotton shirting. They should have wool on sale. I want them to put wool on sale, with being such a baby about it. But then the first fabric I ended up adding to my cart the day that wool did go on sale was this cotton because I knew I had to make a blouse for an 1890s project and I thought the colors in this would be perfect for it. And then the next two fabrics that I added to my cart are for that Sherlock Holmes inspired 1880s sporting ensemble. And I actually need to do more sketching and more planning for this project, but I'm waiting for a reference book to arrive before I do so. I realized that my original idea just wasn't planned well enough. I didn't do enough research into seam lines and the length that the vest should be and the button placement and the construction, and just there was a lot of stuff that I didn't consider and I sort of just dove into that project. I think that's why the construction was so poor, is just because my research in general for that piece was poor. I've still got more research to do on that design before moving forward with it, which is kind of funny given how gung-ho I was about it at the beginning of November and how desperate I was to have fabric for it go on sale so I could purchase it and immediately get started. But now I'm working on other things and I'm less enthusiastic about this project, though I still do want to move forward with it quite badly. So that's a long ramble, but here are the two fabrics that I ended up purchasing for that project. So this is an olive green wool that has a very large blue and orange colored check pattern on it. And though I don't actually like this print of fabric as much as the original brown check that I was using, I do like the weight of it and I like that it is a real 100% wool, just because I find that those tend to iron better and are a little bit easier to manipulate. And I think the finished result for the costume is going to look a lot better just because I'm not struggling with the fabric as much as I was with the polyester blend. It also has a very subtle chevron pattern, so it's made out of these greenish colored fibers, but it's got cream in there as well. So it just has a really beautiful texture and the weight of it is lovely. So even though I'm not as enamored with the color and print as I was with the original fabrics I was using for this project, I do think it is a better option for this project. And then for the vest, as well as just trimming, I purchased this fabric. So this is kind of a dark camely color base, but then it has green and red tones woven throughout it. And when I first took these out of the box, I thought they looked horrible together, but then I left them sitting next to each other and they really grew on me just over the course of taking the other fabrics that I purchased out of the box. So now I think these look really nice together, and I really like how the warm tones in this kind of bring out the really subtle stripe pattern in the olive fabric. So I think these are going to be a nice pairing, and I am still really looking forward to this project. I just have to do a little bit more research on it before I feel comfortable moving forward. And while I was looking through wools, I came across a few others that I wanted to purchase. Remember, at this point I had done a whole bunch of project planning and I had come up with a lot of ideas that I wanted to pursue. And one of those ideas is a suit to go with an 1890s hat that I've been commissioned to make by McCall's. They actually commissioned me to make quite a few hats, and I feel weird making a hat without making some sort of dress or garment to go with it. It just feels very, very wrong to make a hat as a standalone piece. So after pitching these hat ideas and after coming up with the color schemes and the materials that I want to use for the hats, I started coming up with designs sort of based around them, or designs that would look nice with them at the very least. And now I'm slowly on the hunt for materials for those projects. And I ended up coming across something perfect on Fabric.com. This is described as a camel/red/navy/evergreen 100% wool houndstooth suiting, which is a pretty accurate description in my mind. And in person it looks a little bit darker, but it has a cream base and then it's got navy, red, and green checks woven into the houndstooth pattern. And I really liked all of the colors in this. And because I'm sure you were very curious, this is the fabric I'm going to use for the hat. It is a cotton sateen that I got at Joann's, and it matches the red tones in this fabric perfectly. So I think this is going to be a really nice complementary fabric to the wool suiting. This next fabric is yet another green suiting. However, this one is not wool. This is 100% polyester, and I really like the texture of this fabric. It's slightly nubby, almost like a crepe, and it's also a really nice thickness. However, it is heavy. Not in that it's a heavy fabric like a coating, it's just really weighty. So I think this is going to be very difficult to make something tailored out of because I don't think it's going to crease particularly well, and I don't think it's going to hold its shape particularly well. I think just given the weight of the fabric, whatever I make out of it is going to end up looking very weighed down, like literally weighed down. So this is one of those materials I definitely would not have purchased if I saw it in person, but it looked nice online, so I ended up buying 8 yards of it in 2 colors, which I am now mildly regretting, as you can probably tell. But I purchased this for another one of those projects to go with a hat for McCall's. So basically what happened is I came up with this hat idea for a large brim Edwardian hat made out of a cream colored cotton sateen or silk. And I was going to pair it with a green silk, and then I was going to make a green and white dress to go with it. And I actually already had that green and white fabric in mind. It's a beautiful seersucker that I purchased for $2 a yard in the garment district when a store was going out of business. But as we get further into the autumn and the winter season, the less I want to work with a bright green and white striped fabric. It just feels not autumnal appropriate at all. And I could not muster any enthusiasm for this project, and I would need to have it done probably by the end of December, if not early January. The more I thought about that project, the less excited I was about it. So I decided instead I'd make the hat I had envisioned, but I was going to pair it with a white blouse and a green skirt. And this was the greenest green fabric I could find on Fabric Mart that I thought would be appropriate for the skirt I had designed. And it's not very green, so I kind of regret buying it for that reason, on top of the fact that the weight of it is kind of inappropriate for anything I would ever make. But I own it now, and I'm going to try and make it work, and we'll just see how it goes. And then, as I said, I made the mistake of buying that fabric in 2 colors. It really looked so pretty online, and I really liked the texture of it, and it was really, really cheap. It was like $3.50 or $4 a yard, so I ended up buying it in brown too. And I love the color of this brown. It's got some cream woven into it, and it's really nice, like reddish, but also quite neutral-ish. It's almost like a plum-based brown. It's just a beautiful, beautiful color as far as browns go, and the texture of it's so nice. It just really sucks about the weight of this fabric and how draggy it is. Like, it's not drapey, it's like so heavy that it drags. So I'm really not sure what I'm going to end up turning this into. It might just become mock-up fabric or lining fabric for something, but that's one of the risks you take when purchasing online. So now I had officially made the Fabric Mart order that I'd been waiting so desperately to make, but I was still not satisfied because I'd done all of this research and come up with all of these designs, and I really wanted to collect the materials to create them because I really did feel so passionate about each and every one. And it's been about 2 weeks now, and I still feel immense enthusiasm for all of them. So hopefully they will all end up happening. And as I said, I'm really excited to share those designs with you in another video. So this motivated me to make an order from Fabric.com. And the first design that I ended up searching out fabric for was something I came up with while researching my Edwardian suit. So I decided to make my Edwardian suit out of that gray platitudes fabric I showed you earlier, and I was basing it off of fashion plates and advertisements from 1911. And while I was looking at those 1911 advertisements for suits, I came across a lot of advertisements for coats as well. And at this point I was still considering doing coat mists too, which I am still considering, but I don't think is going to end up happening for reasons that I will try and explain in another video. But anyway, I knew I wanted to make a coat inspired by these ones, and I thought I might be making that coat in December. So I decided to get a coating. And this was from Fabric.com, and it was a cheaper wool because it's a wool polyester blend. I want to say it was $10 a yard, and they were out of stock of black, so I ended up getting this charcoal color, which is almost checked in pattern. It kind of alternates fiber colors, so it's made out of black and gray fibers and definitely reads as a very dark gray as opposed to black. But I do really like how this looks with the platitudes fabric, and I think the weight of it is quite nice. However, the weight is completely different from another fabric that I purchased, which was supposed to be identical to this, just in a different color. This has much more texture to it, it's much thicker, it's much stiffer, and it's kind of more scratchy. So I'm really not impressed by the consistency of Fabric.com's fabrics across a range, though I do really like both materials I did purchase from this range. And I'll try and link them down below in case you're interested. And then I got this bright red wool from the same range, which feels much softer, much more velvety almost. It's a wool melton, so much like the pink and the purple wools I showed you earlier. It feels like a very dense, slightly thinner felt. I just know it's going to be a dream to work with. It's also a mixture between polyester and wool, so it won't attract moths, which is always nice. I was trying to decide between this fabric, which was $10 a yard, and another fabric that was like $22 a yard. And the $22 a yard fabric was a much brighter red, which I really wanted, but I didn't want to spend that much. So I ended up buying this one instead, which looked almost burgundy in the photo, and it arrived and it was bright red, which is exactly what I wanted, but not what it looked like in the picture at all. So once again, I'm not really impressed Fabric.com, but I do really like what I ended up with. So this is going to be for a turn-of-the-century project that has puffed sleeves and a very structured short-waisted jacket and paired with a matching, relatively tailored skirt. And both the jacket and the skirt are going to be decorated with gold gimp trim as well as matching gold buttons. And this is going to be heavily based off of a particular fashion plate, which I will try and put on screen or you will see in a future video very soon. Out of all the designs they came up with, this one is the most true to an original fashion plate because I was just obsessed with this fashion plate and I just want to recreate it to the best of my ability. Well, kind of. I mean, I'm going to put my own little twist on it, but I really love this fashion plate and I really want to create something similar to it, and I thought it would be beautiful out of a striking red fabric. This fabric is so nice and soft. I would highly recommend it. It feels absolutely amazing. It's thicker than the other Meltons I purchased, and it's also just so much softer, and I really, really love it, and I really love the color of it too. It reminds me kind of a color I used as the basis for a few medieval projects. I was going to say many years ago, like 4 years ago, so it brings back memories of that, and I just adore it. And I purchased this for a design that is, once again, kind of based off of a specific fashion plate, though I'm definitely putting my own twist on it as well. And it is from 1908, so it is sort of an S-bend silhouette, true Edwardian style suit. I've never made anything from this era before and I don't even have the correct foundations for it, but I came across so many fashion plates while researching the later Edwardian suit that I ended up pursuing, and I just couldn't resist buying the materials and coming up with a design idea for something based off that period. So now I have the fabric for it, I've got a design for it, all I need is the trim for it, and then I can get started. Or at least I can get started on the foundation garments that will go underneath it, and then I can get started on it. So that will be something you see in the future. Now you're probably thinking, well, surely now you had all of the material that you needed and you didn't have to buy anything else. I can see how you might think that. However, I had even more ideas that I wanted fabric for. So while I was researching that first initial suit, I was coming across a lot of references that were from the Victorian era because that was a buzzword that I was using to come across 1890s references. But it meant I was also coming across a lot of references from the 1870s and 1880s, and I ended up coming across quite a few fashion plates and advertisements featuring fur-trimmed coats and fur-trimmed dresses from that period. And I wanted to make something fur-trimmed for a long time, and this was the first time where I'd really seen fur trim integrated into a costume where it made sense. Like, or not even made sense, but where it just really added to the finished garment. And there were all of these beautiful jackets and skirts that were trimmed with fur and had fur around the cuffs and the neck, and I just wanted to create something similar to it. I ended up sketching out an idea for a project from that period with that influence in mind, and I looked through everything at Fabric Mart and everything at Fabric.com and everything at Joann's, and I just couldn't find a fabric that would be suitable for it because I needed it to be heavy enough that it wouldn't look inappropriate alongside of fur, and also heavy enough that it could form something that resembled a jacket. But I didn't want it to be so heavy, like a wool Melton, that it would look very odd while draped to be part of the skirt. So I needed something that was kind of in between something that was very heavy and definitely not something that was really light, and it's kind of hard to find a suiting that meets in the middle of that, especially in the color I was looking for, because I wanted this fabric to be colorful, because I was seeing a lot of bright reds and mustards and golds as part of these fashion plates. I knew that I wanted that to be part of my project as well. Because if you can get away with working with red or green or gold fabric, why would you even touch black or brown fabric? Like, seriously, why? So I looked through every fabric website I could think of and I couldn't find anything. And then I got an email from Fabric Mart. And Fabric Mart put their Vault fabrics 70% off. And their Vault fabrics are a series of materials that they purchased from a store in New York City. And they're not featured on their website in any way. They don't come up in search results. You have to go to a specific tab while you're logged into your premium account to find them, which I hadn't bothered to do. But then I got this email about their vault fabrics going on sale, and I clicked through it and I found the perfect fabric for the project that I had in mind. So it's a bright red wool, though it's not quite as bright as it's showing up in camera. It's very much a true red, and it's got brownish colored pinstripes woven through it. Or I guess they're not pinstripes because they're spaced like an inch apart, but the stripes are very small. At least the brown stripes are very small. The red stripes are like an inch wide, which you probably could have figured out through the process of elimination. The way this was draped in the photos, it just looked perfect for what I had in mind. So I ended up buying 11 yards of it, but they didn't have 11 yards in stock. They only had 10 yards in stock. They called me and I ended up getting a refund and only getting 10 yards instead. I'm not sure that's going to be enough, but I'm going to do my absolute best to make it work because I want to make this project happen. And the reason that I immediately knew this fabric was perfect wasn't just because of the weight, it wasn't just because of the color. Well, it was kind of because of the color, because I'd been eyeing this fake fur trim by Simplicity that you could purchase through Joann's.com. Now, I'd seen it in store, but they didn't have a large enough quantity for me to purchase it for anything. I think they only had about 6 yards in stock, and if you're trimming the cuffs of something, the collar as well as the hem, you're gonna run through that quantity of trim really, really quickly. So I didn't end up purchasing it, but then I saw that you could buy it online, and they had like 50 yards of it in stock online. So I didn't buy it, even though it was on sale, and then I still didn't buy it because I didn't have a fabric that I knew would match it. And then I ended up coming across this fabric, and I ordered this fabric, and then the next day that trim went 60% off, so it was like $2.50 a yard. So I immediately ordered 20 yards of it, and it since arrived, and it perfectly matches this fabric. So the trim is made to be a faux mink, so it's kind of a mixture of brown and black fibers. So I wanted a fabric that would look good with that trim, but I also didn't want it to be a boring color. So this being bright red but having those brownish blackish colored stripes woven through it just makes it absolutely perfect to go with that trim, as well as perfect for the design that I originally had in mind. So I'm so happy with this and so glad that I decided to purchase it. And I was going to say lastly, but this is not last. I actually have 3 more fabrics to show you. But this is another material that I ended up purchasing while they had wool on sale. Because when I originally made my purchase of fabrics from Fabric Mart that I showed you earlier, it wasn't actually wool that went on sale, it was suiting fabrics. And this was something that I had in my cart at the time, but it is a coating fabric, so it was not included in the suiting fabric sale, which was very, very disappointing. However, a week later when they put wool on sale, I went back for it and they still had it in stock, and I just couldn't resist buying it. I've had my eye on this for so long. I am so obsessed with this lime green color. I just think it's beautiful and striking, and it's kind of like autumny but spring/summery as well, and it looks really nice with other vibrant colors. Like you can pair this with pink or purple or orange or black or brown, and it just looks great. Like it's such a nice, fun color. So I really gravitated towards this fabric when I saw them originally get it in stock, and I've been eyeing it ever since. It's probably been about 6 months that they've had it for. And I knew this would go perfectly with the other plaid silk that I bought in the garment district. Seriously, what is it with me finding brightly colored wools that perfectly match fabrics already in my stash? This is insane! Look at how perfect those are together. So I'm thinking that I might end up making an obnoxious plaid 1830s green dress and some sort of coat/cloak to go with it out of this beauty, probably sometime in the very near future, because I just look at these fabrics and smile, and smiling at fabric makes me want to work with fabric. So at this point I was like, now for real, I'm done buying fabric. And then Fabric Mart sent me an email that silk was 70% off, and I quickly broke that promise to myself. At the same time, they also had their designer fabric 65% off. So this acetate/cotton moire file was on sale for $5 a yard. So I purchased 15 yards of it. I think I mentioned this in a previous monthly update when I purchased a similar fabric in ivory, that I've had the worst time trying to find moire fabrics online. If you're unfamiliar with moire, it's a fabric effect that looks almost like it's water stained or almost like wood grain, and the fabric itself tends to feel like a file or a taffeta. It's a really nice weight to work with, and it's just not something that I come across very often, even though it was very popular in historical gowns. So whenever I see it and it's at a reasonable price, I'm very tempted by it, and that was the situation here. So I ended up getting a large quantity of it so I could potentially do something 1860s out of it. Though I'm not sure moire fabrics were used in the 1860s. I might have to do some more research there. But this is one of the rare occasions where a fabric that I think would be suitable and I would be inclined to use for an 1860s project is also cheap enough that I can buy a large enough quantity to make something 1860s out of it. So that's why I did here, purchasing 15 yards of it, and I think this would be beautiful to make something out of to go over top of my elliptical hoop skirt. So I'm going to do some more research into when moire fabrics came into existence, but hopefully that will end up happening at some point. Now for the silks. So I honestly think I might have been able to restrain myself from making this order if one of the things I wanted wasn't almost sold out. So I saw this bright orange two-tone jacquard dot taffeta in bright orange, and I just fell in love. And they only had 6 yards of it left. And 6 yards is like the minimum quantity of a fabric that I'll purchase for a specific project. I need like 6 yards if I'm going to make a dress. So I knew if any of it sold, it would be of absolute no use to me, and I really, really wanted it, so I made the order like immediately after I got that email. So as you can see, this is a bright orange, but it's got a shift to a golden color, as you can probably tell by the fibers at the selvage. And then it's got little tiny dots on it, and it's just beautiful. The weight of this is wonderful. Since it's a jacquard taffeta, it's a little bit less prone to puckering and a little bit easier to work with, since it's got a softer hand. And it's two-tone, which means it's got the prettiest sheen, and I just love this fabric, and I can't wait to work with it. I'm probably gonna wait until next autumn to make something out of it, maybe even use it for my Halloween project next year, but I'm just so excited to have it in my stash because I think it's stunning. And then the other fabric that really caught my eye, and after I decided I was ordering the orange one, I knew I had to get this one as well. This is the same exact fabric in that it's a jacquard dot 100% two-tone silk taffeta, but it's obviously a lime green, and then it has a shift to a bluish aqua color. And they had this same fabric in stock in emerald green color a few days earlier, and I was very good and very restrained. I didn't buy any. And then it sold out and I regretted not getting any, and then they restocked it in this color, which I like even more. So they had a 10-yard limit on silks this day, so I ended up buying 10 yards of it, which should be enough for most things that I want to make, as long as it's a relatively simple gown. So really, really excited by those final 2 purchases. Really excited by all of these purchases. I've got ideas in mind for most of these projects, so I look at these materials and I just see the potential for what they could turn into, and that's really exciting and really fun for me. So I hope seeing these materials was exciting and fun for you as well, and I hope you're looking forward to that sketchbook video and the designs I have in mind for these fabrics alongside the swatches and the original references that I used when researching them. They'll be out very soon, so keep an eye out for it. Also keep an eye out for the poll on the Simplicity pattern fabrics to vote for, as well as some other videos that I have coming up very soon. I really appreciate your support. I really hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to all of you very soon.